Okay, welcome everyone to this afternoon session. Our oversight and accountability session this afternoon is an update on our justice involved youth and the services and programs that are at some phases of development along the way, and those that have been implemented. And um, we have Deputy Commissioner Erica Radke here, and we have Megan Smeaton, and we have Tyler Allen. Thank you all for being here this afternoon. And Tyler, I'm just trying to remember if you've been in the committee this year yet.
I do not believe I've been in the committee this year yet.
I didn't think so. Both of your colleagues have been, but since you have not, we will, and especially since you're not in the room, so you can't see easily who's here, we will go around the room to do introductions. So nice to see you again. I'm Teresa Wood from Waterbury, and I also serve Bolton, Buellscore, and Huntington.
And Donahue from Northfield, also serving Berlin.
Good afternoon, Dan Noyes. I represent Wolcott, Hyde Park, Johnson, and Belvedere.
Brenda Steady, East Milton, Westford.
Doug Bishop, representing Colchester's Chittenden 20 District.
Good afternoon, Todd Nielsen. I represent Brandon Forest.
Hello, I'm Son Eastis. I represent Guilford and Vernon.
Hi there, I'm Esme of Hartford. Esme Cole.
Hi, Jubilee McGill from Bridport, and I also represent Middlebury, New Haven, and Woodbridge.
Good afternoon, Ray Garofano. I live in Essex and I also represent Essex Junction.
Hi, Lori, Committee Assistant.
And we go right around the outside.
I'm Zoe, I'm an intern for Silence and Medford.
Peter Jr. Beach Digger. My name is Jordan Souter, policy advocate for the ACLU of Vermont.
Thank you. Okay, this afternoon we would first like to get an update on, really a status report on the development and supports for justice involved youth. And we also particularly also want to talk about the anticipated budget. And we understand, thank you for getting us the report recently. So we'll also take a look at that. And Lori, can you post that report to our website for today's date? That would be great. Thank you. So I'm going to turn it over to you for any sort of comments that you might want to make first before we kind of get into our question mode, which we do pretty easily, as you all know.
Well, sure. For the record, my name is Erica Radke, Deputy Commissioner of the Family Services Division of DCF. And I wasn't sure, Chair Wood, would you like us to talk initially about any updates as far as the facility, or would you like us to jump into the budget details?
Let's get an update about what's going on with Virgins, what's going on down in Southern Vermont, and any other, supports and services. Wouldn't hurt to have an update about what's happening in Middlesex. And we would also like to hear any comments you might have about the recent 7 Days article around your contractor that you're currently working with, and some of the concerns that we have noted from that, and trying to understand what is your oversight, how your oversight will continue or be changed as a result of more fully understanding some of these charges that have been, or complaints that have been made about that contractor. So why don't we start with the overview?
Sure. I'll start off with, and Tyler, please step in as you see fit. Talking about Virgins, right now, our commissioner and Commissioner Manoli with BGS are actively engaged with the city of Virgins to try to see a path forward for us to be able to site the Green Mountain Youth Campus. There's been some discussion about of course, things the town would like in order to be able to site the facility, as well as there are some permitting and zoning issues that need to be worked out before we can move forward. So at this time, I believe the city may be having a type of straw poll to decide on what the path forward would be. I'm not quite sure what the date would be for that, but that's really where we are in terms of Virgins. We're absolutely committed to building the Green Mountain Youth Campus. We're just hoping that Virgins can be that site, but there are a couple of wrinkles along the way that we're trying to work out with the town. And I know that our commissioners are really actively engaged with them to see how we can keep moving along that path.
So how is that affecting your timeline?
It has delayed the timeline because until we can get the zoning and then the permitting in place, we really can't move forward. So it's definitely slowed us down, along with, even just getting things for construction, even when you have zoning and permitting, that's slow as well. So we are off of our projected, timeline at this point, but we're really focusing on just trying to get those pieces in place. And then we're hoping we can move forward there, speeding up as we can. But I absolutely can't say we're on the same timeline. It's definitely delayed.
Representative Noyes?
Just wondering, do you have your state permits also already, or is that also something you need to get? Could you talk about town?
I'm going to defer to Tyler. I don't believe we have the permitting. We were going to start with the zoning and then the permitting. But Tyler, do you have anything to add to that?
I'm sorry, I think our partners at BGS might be able to more adequately answer that question in terms of what the permitting and zoning needs are. The state has requested an expansion of the existing PUB, and that's what we're talking about. The zoning or the review board had requested some preliminary site plans to help with their understanding. So we did submit those to them last week, I believe. And that's where it stands now. I'm not sure how to differentiate between what the state permits are and the town local zoning needs are. Apologies for that.
Thank you. And if we want more details on sort of, I guess, the zoning and permitting process, we can talk to Commissioner Manoli and her staff about that. I understand that they're the ones who kind of deal with those issues. Thank you. And so at this point in time, you're probably looking at a minimum of 2 years out, I would say, as being, that's probably on the optimistic side of a timeline, I would say. Does that seem consistent with what you're thinking, or do you have a thought about how much of a delay, and is it causing you to rethink your strategy at all, or are you looking at other properties? Are you thinking about different ways to serve these kids? Just trying to get a sense of, there's going to be what looks like to be an even more extended period of time before there's, I guess, what I would say, more formal programming. Not that you're not doing that now in different ways, but more formal programming in the way of a facility. So I'm just trying to figure out if this has caused you to kind of rethink anything.
Well, we continue to talk about different ideas, but I'm going to have to defer to specifics. At that point, I would rather have our commissioner come in and talk about that. But what I can say is 2 years out does sound right to me as well, which is why we're definitely happy that we are able to use red clover in the meantime. And I know that was another question of yours, was about the status there. It's fully staffed and able to serve up to capacity for 4 youth. There are 4 youth in there currently. And we've heard rave reviews in terms of the treatment for the youth there. And we've been very happy with the success of the program thus far. And we do have extensive oversight of that program. We have a member of Tyler's team going in there every other week, a member of the commissioner's team also visiting every other week. And we do continue, of course, to have, if there are issues, there haven't been, to my knowledge, but if there are any issues that would require our residential licensing and special investigations to come out, they would be out there as well. And we, of course, do have social workers visiting monthly the kids that are in the program.
Thank you. We have a question here, Representative Donahue.
Yeah, thank you. I know this was the interim crisis stabilization component, not the treatment component. What are you finding to be the average length of stay?
I'm going to ask Tyler to weigh in on that.
So that is a mixed, it's very mixed. So if I give you an average, it will not be adequate from, describing what the long end is or the short end. We've had youth there as little as 2 days. I think the fastest turnaround was actually 1 day. We had one youth who was only there for 1 day before he could be released after a court hearing. And we had a youth, I think the longest standing is a youth who's been there 100 and I think, don't quote me on this in the moment, 148 days. And it really varies dependent on the youth needs and the circumstances of it. One of the challenges is youth that are being held there on. Apologies.
I'm sorry, Tyler, I need to pause this for a moment. We've lost our Zoom connection momentarily, hopefully momentarily. Although last week we lost it for more than a moment. So hold on just for see what's happening. It's spinning. It's spinning. That's never a good sign.
It looks like the other committees that I watch are also just spinning. Oh dear. Oh. Well, let's see. It's just not it could be.
I got it.
Oh, good. So you need to help me.
You're able to enter the room. Says we're live. Are we live?
It says we are. We should be.
Yeah, there's a.
I'm going to presume that we are. Okay, so we're going to keep going as though we are live. Hopefully we are. Apologies to anybody out there who maybe can hear us but can't see us or vice versa. So Tyler, I'm sorry, I interrupted you mid-sentence.
That's okay. So I think the most limited amount of time was a youth who was only in there for a day. And then the longest was, I said, 145 days. That does appear to be accurate for a youth who was in there starting last year. And it varies. I mean, I think the reality is that it's a challenge to get kids into treatment environments that have them referred into. And so for some youth, they're in this crisis stabilization level of care until such a time as they can get into the treatment, appropriate treatment. In other cases, it's a youth who is being held on what we refer to as ICJ, that's Interstate Compact for Justice, or for juveniles rather, and that is a situation where we may hold an individual throughout the duration of their preliminary court proceedings so that those issues can be resolved before they are returned to their probationary status in another state. If they have a warrant for their arrest, for example, in another state, we hold on behalf of that state. So those situations like that can extend the stay. Our aim for this program was to keep it as short as possible. But we did know going into it there were going to be circumstances where youths were held longer just because of their legal circumstance.
So just as a follow-up, I guess you started getting to where I was going to ask, because I don't recall in any of the earlier discussions about the crisis stabilization that there was any anticipation at all that there would be extended stays by any youth.
think what our anticipation or what our hope was those situations would be rare because we knew we were going to need to create bed space, so to speak. We're going to need to be dealing with the most urgent crises. And then I think the reality that's come to light is those youths who have needed to stay longer for their whatever their circumstances are that dictate they remain in program, have been very difficult to move out. So we are kind of refocusing efforts on who we can step down to community levels of care. That tends to be where we do step them into a community level of care immediately. Some youth have been gone right straight home. Other youths have been returned to their home state.
Go ahead, Representative Steady.
When we hold a youth from another state, do they reimburse any expenses from the other state?
I do not believe so. And I would clarify, this is not strictly holding a youth from another state. So if a youth from another state comes into Vermont and acquires new charges in Vermont, they have to satisfy those new charges before they can sign off to be returned to the state. So the majority of the time they're spending here is to address their own charges in Vermont. The requirement of the agreement between states is that we maintain them securely until such a time as they can go back to their state. And then the other state has some time, to prepare for what their return would look like after they resolve their issues here. So I don't believe there's reimbursement associated with it. It is a reciprocal agreement, though. When a Vermont youth is in another state and acquires new charges, it's the same situation in reverse.
Thank you.
So I guess that part I missed when we were talking about this originally last year, the ICJ. I wasn't envisioning ICJ kids here, so I'm just how many youth in that category have been served here?
Out of a total of 15 youth that we have served with this program since it's open, 4 of them have been ICJ youths.
Okay. All right.
Are you, have you been what's the capacity and how many youth are there, at any given time? And have you been at capacity?
We are currently at capacity. There's 4 beds and all 4 are filled right now. We're looking to move 2 hopefully out within the next week and a half to create space.
Oh,
sorry.
Yeah.
It's a hornet.
And so, when we talked about Red Clover, we had, obviously we had plans for a different facility to come online a little bit sooner than what it's anticipated to. So what is your expectation in terms of the length of time that Red Clover will be open? And are you encountering any issues with that with the town of Middlesex, or have they been willing partners or recipients of, the facility there?
I have not heard of any complaints from the town of Middlesex. They've been excellent partners, and I would anticipate that we're viewing Red Clover as a bridge to Green Mountain Youth Campus. So I would anticipate it would be open until Green Mountain is open, so that we can continue to have that secure level of treatment and care for our youth.
And I know there were some concerns about the facility itself, the building itself. I know, our committee visited there last year. Are you running into any issues with the facility?
None that I'm aware of. I mean, any of the normal wear and tear based upon youth activities, BGS has come in quickly and fixed things. I have not heard anything from the program indicating, problems with the facility itself. Tyler, have you heard of anything? Any complaints?
I would say overall, there haven't been complaints about the program. I would say the largest facility challenge we've dealt with has to do with the doors. Youths damaging the latching fixtures to the bedroom doors. One bedroom door was damaged by a youth in care. The BGS team was able to initiate repairs within the day on all of those. And so we have been able to address them as they've come up. But that's the only one that comes to mind.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Representative Bishop.
It was noted the hope of having 2 of the current youth that are lodged there within the next week and a half that they would leave. And I think said to create some space. It implied to me that there are youth who would be appropriate for Red Clover if space was available. Where would those youth be now while waiting for Red Clover?
So I don't want to speak to any youth that need Red Clover in this moment. That wasn't the implication I was trying to make. I think a program like this operates best when there is at least 1, if not 2 open beds, so that should a crisis occur at any given time, that we can immediately be responsive without having to figure out where to, how to prioritize and triage what youth might go where. So I don't have youth that I need to put in the program at this moment, although I would like to see a little bit of space for operational purposes.
Thank you.
Before we moved into budget issues, I want Megan to make sure that she has an opportunity to be part of this conversation. Could you give us an update on what's happening at the 2 beds down at the sheriff's office? I forget what the name of that place is supposed to be.
We're calling that the Windham County Crisis Stabilization Program because we're very inventive with our names. So that program, in terms of the actual renovations, is well underway. There has been a slight delay. We were hoping renovations would have been completed by March. Obviously, that did not happen. Our timeline has us set out for June 3rd. The challenge we're seeing at this point doesn't have to do with the renovations of the program, which is starting to look great. They finally have walls, sheetrock on the walls, and it's starting to take the form that we had envisioned in the beginning and hoped for. The challenge is finding a provider to run out of the program. We've released an RFP 3 times now and have yet to identify a successful bidder on the program. So we are still circling around how do we adjust that RFP and how do we reach out to engage the interest of providers on a 4th submission of the RFP to find somebody who's able to do that work.
Okay, that I guess maybe leads us to the questions around the current provider and the who right now seems to be the only willing provider, which kind of makes me nervous at the same time. I guess I'm going to ask you folks if you were aware of the history with this provider and the charges and the reports of abuse that this provider has that have been levied against this provider, and if so, then I guess what increased level of oversight is the department providing? I know you talked about, at least weekly or every other week visits. So I guess first off, were you aware of the charges and other reports? And if so, I'm just, I know that you felt like your sort of backs were up against the wall because you didn't have other providers to choose from, frankly, from what my recollection was around Red Clover. But what are I need you to be a little bit more specific about the oversight that you're providing to assure that we don't have similar reports or accusations being made, under our guise here and these programs that they are currently operating for DCF.
No, I appreciate that question because it's important to us since these youth are in our custody and then we're placing them in residential treatment facilities, that they're getting the best care that we can provide for them through our programs, and as well that they are safe because we know they're coming from other situations where they have experienced trauma and where they haven't been safe. So I do understand everyone's concern when you read a report like what was in 7 days. Uh, I know that in terms of that particular incident involving Mr. Karen, I was aware of that, and I was aware of other things that went on in terms of rehabilitation and how he was brought back into his work, was able to resume work after being cleared by his employer. The class action lawsuits out of New Hampshire, we also were aware of. But I don't want, when we talk about this was the only provider willing to do the work, I don't want it to seem like we were willing just to take anybody that was around because we needed somebody to do the work. We continue to vet our providers. We continue to do all of our due diligence. And when we were, for example, getting Red Clover up and running, our residential licensing and special investigations unit was deeply involved in making sure that all of the different policies were adhered to. In terms of increased vetting or reviewing the programs, we are continuing to do exactly what I said in terms of making sure we have a regular presence, having good connections with our kids to make sure if they see something that they say something. We are looking at policies in terms of who we would feel should be able to work on these types of residential treatment programs, those who have histories with felonies and things like that. We're looking at making sure our policies can be tightened up. So that's one thing we are doing. But it's this population is very difficult to work with. We do know that nationwide there are a lot of lawsuits, and our position is we will continue to make sure that our kids are as safe as we can. We're not we've been, the work with this provider, we've been, for the most part, satisfied with, but that doesn't mean that we aren't going to continue to be diligent to make sure our kids are safe.
And have you had any reports or complaints by, whether it's the public defender or whether it's family members or, the youth themselves? Have there been, or other staff who may, notice things? Have there been any complaints or issues of or reports since the Red Clover opened?
Since Red Clover opened, none that I am aware of at all. In terms of VPI itself, there was that complaint that was mentioned in the article that we are, as well as law enforcement, actively investigating. Tyler, are you aware of any additional complaints?
There's not. I'd like to speak to Red Clover and Sentinel specifically. One thing that's not necessarily clear to everybody, that these are distinct programs from one another and actually distinct companies from one another. They share leadership, they share historical ties, but Mount Prospect Academy out of New Hampshire, VPI in Southern Vermont, and Sentinel are all three different entities. They do share leadership. But they have different callings and different tasks. Sentinel is the newest of the group. I've heard no complaints about the program. That's including from the Defender General's office and others. We just had a facility planning stakeholders meeting yesterday, and I don't want to speak to the Defender General's office, but the juvenile chief was there in the room, and he gave kind of resounding support for the work being done by the staff of Sentinel in that meeting, in my estimation. And he even expressed concerns, should we be interested in bringing in a provider other than Sentinel into Green Mountain Youth Campus, that he would want there to be some heavy vetting involved, because he's been very satisfied to date with the services that Red Clover is providing to youth in care.
Thank you. We actually heard in January, actually, similar reports from him when we had joint meetings with the Judiciary Committee. We have Representative McGill and then Representative Donahue.
It's a kind of ask my question and then run. So I'll watch back later. I'm just wondering, are youth as part of the as they're doing the can't think of the word, but part of the intake, are they made aware of their rights on how they, what kinds of things are not okay and what kind of things are okay? And are they given an education on how they can report things they believe are wrong and how they can make complaints? And then are they given the tools to be able to do that when should a situation arise? And again, I apologize, I have to run, but look forward to listening back.
I do want to say, in general, that's why I was mentioning it's important for each youth to have a close connection with their worker, because that's typically where a youth will, if something has gone wrong, even if it's with another kid in the program or if something like abuse happens, they will share that type of information with their worker, which is why our statute indicates the worker should be going in monthly. But I'm going to turn to Tyler if he has any specifics in terms of the information that the kiddos are given at intake.
I'll have to refresh my memory as to the specifics of what information is offered them. I do know that all those due process information is part of standard intake. I will say there's a lot of scenarios that a youth can disclose what their experience in the program are. There's several different ones. We visit, my specialized services unit is contractually required to visit all of their contracted programs biennially to do a site visit. As I said before, we do it every other week with this program just because of the attention on it, the severity of need associated with secure placement. And part of that is conducting interviews with the youth in the program when it happens from our team. We think there is a value to DCF being removed from the program provider. The program provider is distinct from us so that we can find out if youth are satisfied directly ourselves. I would say past that, of course, the youth's attorneys have access to them at any time. And also the Office of Child and Family Youth Advocate has been present and very engaged in this program since its opening. And they have gone out to conduct interviews with the young people as well in the program. So there's a lot of avenues that we can kind of hear feedback as it comes up. And largely our experience is that youth are feeling very satisfied with the program, which doesn't mean that incidents don't occur or haven't occurred, but I didn't get any report of incidents for the first 6 months of open.
Okay, thank you. Representative Donahue.
Yeah, thank you. And yes, I think we've heard, it's all been good things we've heard thus far from the program. And I think, institutional structure and so forth may have more to do with whether that is sustained, how sustainable it is. I am concerned about transparency. So I guess I'll say this is a complaint about Red Clover. If you attempt to go to their website, it's pretty much an artificial website, has extremely little information on it, has click-on tabs which actually don't go anywhere but short circuit back to itself. And it appears from trying to do research that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, it appears that Sentinel was created for the purpose of bidding on to run Red Clover. And as you mentioned, it's run by the same folks. It seems it's a limited liability shell corporation. These same people are running several different separate, quote unquote, corporate entities, but they are actually, that is for liability purposes rather than being anyone different operating them. And so Sentinel was the creation of a new company to bid on this by the same people who are running those other programs. Is that roughly right?
I would say
that is not quite correct. I would say that Sentinel actually did not bid on this project. We did not have a bidder. So it was only after that that we enter into discussions to try to find someone to do this type of work for us.
But do you
And I
know what other
believe-
program? I'm sorry, I didn't realize you weren't finished. Oh, wait.
But Tyler, you're going to weigh in terms of Sentinel?
I just want to, I want to share that I don't think it is quite right. While I would acknowledge that they share leadership. So we mentioned Mr. Karen. He is the presiding leader over Mount Prospect Academy and VPI, which is the programs in Southern Vermont, as well as Sentinel. The staff that are employed by Sentinel are exclusive to Sentinel. I do think there is some consultation that happens with on the development of Green Mountain Youth Campus involving Lorraine Baker, who was previously associated with the VPI school. But other than that, all of the staff is exclusive to Sentinel, and I don't know that the purposes of, I don't think I would go so far as to say the purposes of them creating a new company to oversee Sentinel is because of liability concerns. It has to do more with they define the scope of Sentinel is different because it is a secure placement. It's a secure level of care, as well as how they envision Green Mountain Youth Campus. And they do not believe that the governing board of VPI, that wasn't part of what that board was brought together to do, because those are non-secure facilities. And so they created a new company for what they believe was an expressly different purpose.
But it was created expressly for this. Do you know where you can find who the board members are? Because none of that is available on the one-page website.
The board members for VPI, or are you talking about
No,
for
for
Sentinel?
Red Clover, for Sentinel.
Yeah.
For Sentinel.
I don't know that Sentinel has a board, but I can get that information for you on what the governing body over Sentinel is.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It was disconcerting to try to follow the corporate trails and the overlapping people, to say the least, because it really
I would agree with Representative Donahue. It pretty much looks fake. Yeah. And when you go to, maybe some feedback for the Sentinel group would be, maybe they might want to beef up their website so we actually could tell who they are. Because you cannot tell who they are from this website. So I'm just, and it does look like they uniquely presented it just for Red Clover.
Got the same pictures it has the same pictures on it as the VPI ones, or VP,
Okay.
whatever those initials are.
I do want to express an appreciation to the representatives. I did jot down that information. That website needs to be made more robust, and that's feedback I'm comfortable bringing to them. I'm sure that's just an area of attention that they didn't put in, that I think they would be happy to accommodate.
Well, I mean, I hope you can appreciate it's not really just like about the website. It's about trying to understand who they are and what their corporate structure is, what who is in charge, how, it's not, I guess I would say it's not uncommon for companies to have a host company or whatever you want to call them, and then to have spin-offs for particular programs. But it should be clear, I mean, that should be clear when we're seeing that, especially since we're talking about public taxpayer dollars running these services. And so that it should be clear where that trail goes. And it's just not clear from anything public that we can see here. So that's what it's about. It's not about, it's not about necessarily having a crappy website.
Understood. You want to be able to understand what their corporate structure is, and it's opaque at this point.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. So let's talk a bit about I'm going to move to budget now. Anybody have any other questions on program before we move to budget? Okay. So let's talk about the budget area. And I guess I'm gonna turn to Megan or, whoever else wants to speak to this, but we've been, we raised the concern back during our committee's work on the budget with Representative Donahue and Steady about what the ongoing costs of a fully fledged operation as you envision it would be. And then, having that confirmed from Adam Gresham a little bit later on that, yes, they're anticipating a deficit in FY26. And yet that deficit has not been budgeted for in the budget as we understand it. So if that's not accurate, I would love to be enlightened, but that's the way we understand things right now. So if you could review that with us, that would be great.
I'd be happy to. So for the record, Megan Smeaton, Financial Director, DCF. I think that there's like a few things that I would want to flag before diving into the details. As Deputy Commissioner Radke said, we have a lot of uncertainty when it comes to expenses that are going to be hitting the Secure Residential Treatment Facility appropriation in our budget for the next year, the 2 years. We worked really hard to try to project, but projections are constantly changing as we adjust timelines. And so I'll share what I had discussed with Rep. Steady and Rep. Donahue, and Tyler discussed with us back in, February maybe. And then we can talk through some areas where I think that perhaps we're getting a little ahead of ourselves if we say like we're for sure going to see those expenses hit. The other thing is that we have a BAA for the purpose of addressing known pressures. And right now, we are, like I said, we're not confident in what costs we will have incurring next year, if any, for the Green Mountain Youth Facility. So it doesn't make sense to budget for it in the base budget now if we're not certain that the expenses are going to materialize next year. And it's one of those things that we can address in BAA if we need to. But I think as we've seen the trajectory change and move out a little bit, we might not even have that concern. So I will share my screen if I'm allowed to.
Momentarily.
Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yes.
We have that. Yes, and it's on our website as well.
Okay, perfect. So this is just what Rep. Donahue and Representative Steady had asked for. And one of the things was what were the costs in state fiscal year 24 and what were the costs in state fiscal year 25 through December. So the first tab just shows you what we have hitting our Secure Residential Treatment Facility appropriation through the first half of this year. Does anybody have any questions on that?
And that seems to be the same as what you reported in January in your SRTF report. Same bottom line numbers anyways, I guess I will say.
Yes, this is the data that I had shared back in February and that I think FSD used when they submitted the report to you. So it should tie. And then the next question was, what was the 25 projection? And so we have a base appropriation for secure residential treatment of 3.7 million. We have one-time carry forward of 5.6 million, and then we have a one-time appropriation of 4.6 million. And so these are just, you know, where we were projecting to close for this year, based on what we know. And again, like, we're a lot more confident about our costs in the in-year because we know that we're operating these contracts for these facilities already.
So where it says grants and other agreements of the 3.47, that includes Red Clover, yes?
Yes, so that's our base appropriation. So so we have some contract funding, some operating funding, and then the vast majority of it is meant for the operation or the contracting for a facility.
Okay. And then I just want to make sure I understand. I think I understand the one-time carry forward. I mean, that's essentially money that's kind of rolled over from year to year from what was in the base for Woodside. Is that right?
Correct. So that's the funding that we had set aside or carried forward year over year. It's been growing.
Okay.
As we have not been operating a secure treatment facility.
Kind of a little bank account you have.
So the 13 million is what you're talking about?
No, I'm talking about the 5.59.
Okay, thanks. I see carryover. Okay.
Okay, and then can you refresh my memory about what the one-time appropriation is, the 4.6 million?
That was funding that we received several years ago, when we were planning a former iteration of this for construction costs and startup costs for our permanent facility. It was put into a one-time appropriation, and so we're holding on to it until.
Okay. So essentially, you're carrying forward that almost 5.6 and that 4.6. Those are all things from previous years that have been carried forward. It says one-time carry forward, but that's really in base budget, isn't it? The 5.59.
Yeah. So this one is in a separate appropriation, and these are in the same appropriation. They're in the secure residential treatment facility.
Okay. 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 Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, and so, you know, we budget our expenses into these columns. That would leave 1.2 million left that we would request to carry forward and close out again. And that is a closeout. You know, every year we have to make that request at closeout because it is in the base appropriation. And then the one-time appropriation is a separate appropriation, again, a little more secure for carried forward purposes. And so that leaves us moving forward our 3.7 million in our base, which reloads in 26, projected 1.2, 1.3 million for the closeout carry forward request, and then the 4.6 that remains in the one-time appropriation. So this is what I think you're talking about. Well, I'm certain that you all are talking about when you say that we're closing in a deficit. I think there's a couple of items I'd like to flag on here. The VCIN bed is actually going to be funded with global commitment. So that's actually not 100% general fund. And we do feel that perhaps that makes more sense to be funded from the FSD budget. And I would look to Deputy Commissioner Radke or Tyler to talk more about the programmatic side of things. But this is actually, it's 100% global commitment funded. I don't know if either of you want to add anything on that.
Sure, I can add that is a bed that is dedicated for youth having developmental disabilities that are in DCF custody. And so those are funds that we have for that bed that is dedicated for DCF youth, because there are only a small number of VCIN beds in the state, and we were having difficulty being able to have a placement for our youth. So that was really an important, it's been really wonderful to have that bed, and it's been occupied ever since it opened. And in terms of, it's not necessarily it's not secure. You know, that's a bed just for youth with developmental disabilities. So that was another reason why we felt like it should be moved out of this particular budget. Tyler, do you have anything to add as far as the VCIN bed?
I don't think I have anything broadly to add to that equation as we're conceptualizing the need and attaching all the things. I think when we originally requested this, it was asking to do analysis of the cost of Woodside versus the analysis of the cost of the various programs put in place to kind of fill the gap left by Woodside. And VCIN, specifically individuals with developmental needs being served there, feels outside of what the Woodside would have done, but at the time we were preparing this, that had been the state of crisis, and that had been where we attached it because it was a major driver behind alternative setting staffings. And so it's how it got attached into here, but I think that could be pulled out as we find different places within the budget to pay for the VCIN bed.
Well, and I know the other VCIN beds are paid for with global commitment. So I'm presuming that this one would be eligible for global commitment as well. And these other funds we're kind of comparing a little bit of apples and oranges because the other is state funds and this would only be 40-something% state funds.
That's correct.
Yeah. Yes, Representative Steady.
I get confused on the 1,748,000 in the negative.
On the bottom. Yeah, she was.
Especially when we have 4 million sitting there, why can't they take it out of the 4,626 that's just sitting there?
It's not sitting there. You see the top, they have 4.6 million in expenses and 4.6 million in revenue.
Right. Why can't that be taken out of the revenues? I guess I'm confused about.
Because they already have, they have expenses for that already.
They already
Yeah,
do.
it's used. It's all used.
It's being.
It's all used.
It's all being used.
Okay, I didn't know it was used. I thought it was.
See the bottom line where it says zero?
Yeah.
That's
the
net line.
I see it now.
Yeah. Representative Cole.
I'm curious, I saw, in like your, I don't know, it was like 2019 finances report, you had a line item for food. And I'm curious, right now, if you're contracting with an outside group to offer food, or who you're working with.
I guess this is part of the overall contract. They don't accept Woodside, they have to provide the food.
I see. So.
It's included in the operating contract.
And
Is there not?
And is there, so that's not an outside organization, you're just making orders yourself rather than contracting with a different agency?
Yes, we don't have an exclusive contract to provide food. It's the contract with the program, as Rep Wood was sharing, that is responsible for providing food.
So there would be like no familiar name?
It's whoever Sentinel is however Sentinel is purchasing the food.
Yeah, okay. Just curious if there
We
was.
would have to ask them.
Yeah, okay.
Is there any insurance that can be collected from the parents or for these kids?
This would not be a health insurance covered.
It wouldn't be a
cost.
covered cost?
No.
Medicaid, anything, for the development, for the.
No.
There's no
Not as a
mental health services being provided that can be billed for?
So there definitely are mental health
Yeah,
services.
it sounds it. That's why I didn't know if they could be billed for.
We tried to do that with Woodside and it was denied. So we know we
That
can't,
doesn't make sense.
for this.
Oh, doesn't make sense, but you did try it once.
Just a brief comment, because I printed out a copy of the, the new report, the end of March report. And I'm not saying this to somehow say, well, you didn't acknowledge that you were late. We knew it was an oversight. That's all okay. But
January date.
right, because we didn't have it yet, we put language in the budget. We did things that somebody could look and say, why did you put those things in when you got this January 15 report that gave you all that information? Because when I printed it out, I discovered nowhere, anywhere on this report does it say that it was actually submitted on March 27, 2025. Every spot in it, every page says 1/15/2025, which was the original due date, not when we received it. So I think that ought to be corrected on it, just to indicate
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. I was going to bring that up.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you can write due January 15th and you can write submitted March 27th, but the report date cannot say January 15th on it because that's inaccurate.
Understood. We'll absolutely make that change. And thank you for bringing that to our attention.
So,
Okay. Yeah, sorry. We've sort of sidetracked our conversation, Megan. Go ahead.
No worries. The other thing I was just going to say is that as part of this $1.7 million potential need that we had forecasted, we had included a $1.5 million construction startup design expenses for the new permanent facility. I think that it's safe to say that that number is still in flux. And so I don't want us to, we were confident enough when we were building our budget this year to put in an ask for next year based on the time and the number of steps required to get somewhere with this permanent facility that feels concrete to make funding projections off of.
I can appreciate that. I mean, I think that there is a lot that is unknown at this point in time with regard to a new facility. It's kind of why I asked the question in the beginning about whether, these significant delays in the facility had you thinking at all about whether or not a different approach or a smaller facility might serve the purpose. I'm just really wondering and wanting to make sure that while we still have the opportunity to make sure that we're making the right choice, that we are in fact making the right choice. Do we need the facility that we are talking about? I mean, it feels like there has been, and I'm just saying that this because of what we're hearing or not hearing here, but it feels like there has been somewhat of a bit more stabilization given, the access to red clover and then hopefully the oncoming access to the very craftily named Windham, whatever you named it, in Windham County. So I appreciate the need for the resource, and I'm just wondering still about whether we should be rethinking that, to be just totally honest about that.
To be rethinking it in terms of like population served or size or because I was just thinking, the facilities stakeholder planning group is absolutely engaged in talking about, what we all feel coming from our different perspectives, what we want to build in terms of like Green Mountain Youth Campus. So there is still a lot of discussion. And while we're in this phase where we're trying to get moving, I do think there is an opportunity to continue talking about what will best serve the kids of Vermont that need this level of care. And I do think, though, when we're talking about size of program, I look at that red clover is always full. And how Tyler was talking about the need to keep some youth out to have that type of flexibility. So I am hesitant when we're starting to talk about smaller size, just based on what we're experiencing right now with this being in constant use.
Yeah, go ahead, Tyler. I see your hand up.
Yeah, I would just like to share, and I guess it's just doubling down on what Deputy Commissioner Radke just said, but there are some individuals who think that we should take any resources that we put towards the building of a facility and put them into prevention services. There's some individuals who think that we should only have very small 1 to 2 bed facilities, but a multitude of them around the states. And then there's kind of the individuals that say, I think the planning as we're talking about Green Mountain Youth Campus is that it's a multi-program campus. There's more than one thing's happening here. And so what we're trying to do in Red Clover is just take the most urgent situations and hopefully attend to all the needs of the different kids in that space as best we can for now. The hope of the program for the future in Green Mountain Youth Campus is to have different programs that can attend to different needs. Some youth might need to be in care for longer and have a specific treatment protocol attached to that. Other youth, we just need to get through the point of crisis on. And so having different programs for that. I would also say there's some stakeholders who are looking to expand the populations of youth served. And when I say that, I say specifically, what are we doing for youth who are over the age of 18? Youth who are currently maybe even under the age of 18, but charged as adults with criminal charges that are currently under the care of Department of Corrections. If we're going to be serving that population on behalf of the Department of Corrections, those cases tend to take a very long time as they move through the adult legal system. How would we build that? So I think some folks want to see a system that is bigger in terms of we're serving a broader population. Other folks want to see us stepping away from that. And I think we're trying to look for that happy medium in the middle, which is serving as many young people as we possibly can with a program that is dynamic, or a couple of programs that are dynamic enough to accommodate varied youth needs.
Well, I mean, I think you brought up an interesting point that there are a number of different types of needs. And I'm just going to say, just so you know where I'm coming from, I definitely have a bias against the use of the word campus when it comes to residential programs for anybody, whether it's youth or otherwise. It calls up institutional services for me. So I just thought I should let you know that. Bless you. And I think that understanding, like I'm thinking like right now, where are the youth going who need the longer term, so as Representative Donahue was talking about, we were talking about Red Clover as a stabilization program. And it's, as you pointed out, Tyler, it's sort of serving as a stabilization and for some longer term in, a few situations that have needed it. Are there other places that we are currently serving youth who need longer term support? So, I mean, for instance, are we sending other youth out of state that you would envision being served, in Vermont, if we are successful in, operating this and establishing this program?
Yes. In short answer is yes. What we're seeing is our resource pool of out-of-state programs that will accept youth with this case profile is diminishing. One of the program providers that specialized more in particularly adolescent male youth with aggressive case presentations has recently suspended all referrals from any state outside of their own. And that was a provider we used because they would be able to work with youth that aggression is part of the case profile. So it's getting increasingly difficult to find out-of-state programs for them, which is okay, because we don't want to be sending kids out of state as a rule. And so I think that puts a little bit of urgency here. I will say they're not all youth who should go into the Green Mountain, I'm going to say campus, Green Mountain Youth Campus, even though I'm hearing your word of caution on
program.
That program. Because I do think the establishment of a PRTF program in the state would also serve some of those youths that wouldn't require that type of secure level of care. So I think we can continue to take a specialized look at them, but I think having youth served in state is critically important.
Mm-hmm. How many youth do we have in out-of-state programs right now that, well, I guess two questions. How many youth do we have in out-of-state programs, and then how many youth that we would have served or would be serving in state if we had the full capacity that you've outlined in your plans?
I apologize, I don't have those numbers at the ready right now, but I can submit them to you by the end of the day.
Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate that. I'm going to switch topics a little bit here. And Megan, I appreciate the review of that financial information. That's really helpful. But don't go, because I think we have some other questions for you as well. But Representative Donahue has a question that she wants to follow up around the youth transport information that you had provided.
Yes, and thank you very much for getting some of it to us. It did not include the sort of most critical piece of information that we tracked in the past and were looking for. Because the concern, both when the law was first passed, but also our concern when we first raised it, when we were talking about the budget, arose out of the fact that there were budget pressures because of the lack of providers of, youth transport. And that raised the question or concern, was that going to mean more increased reliance on the sheriff's departments, which then in turn goes to the underlying issue. It used to be, and we're going back a little bit in time because I've been here a while now, but, call sheriffs will shackle. That was just their automatic policy. They were not the clinicians. They said, you call us, we shackle the person we're transporting, regardless of age, situation, et cetera. And they were routinely used back several decades ago. And so the critical thing that was being tracked was, because there are supposed to be very special protocols and sign off by the commissioner and so forth, if in fact mechanical restraints or any kind of restraints are required. This data doesn't indicate use of restraints. It just says sheriffs versus the other providers. And that kind of was, the critical concern is what is the status of the use of restraints when transporting children who are in DCF custody.
Thank you, Representative. I know there is a special form that is put forward and required around NV secure transport, and within that form there is a checkbox if we're specifically having shackles or mechanical restraints used as a portion of that. We were defining all sheriff transports as secure transports, so that was the point of differentiation. I think I'll have to get back with my quality control team to understand if they can find that in the data. It might require finding all these forms and doing a manual tabulation. This was what we tried to recreate the previous reporting mechanism as accurately as we could from the broader data. But it might be a bit of a deeper dive to try to differentiate which ones was their mechanical restraint versus just secure.
Right. Well, it was part of the original reporting when it indicated restrained. And so, at some point it was, and of course we stopped requiring them. So I'm not sure that, and that is more a question to the chair. I'm not sure that's something that we would be putting on you to, to go back on this information now for before the end of this term. I think it probably calls for us to start requiring the regular annual reports again with the specific data that we want, so that you can capture it as it comes along.
Well, I mean, I guess what I would, before I would go that far, I think that it would be better actually to know what portion of those sheriff transports involve the use of restraint. And if it's a very small number, we may in fact not need an annual report. But if it is, if I'm sort of was interpreting what you said, Tyler, as when the sheriffs are called, we're presuming that there's restraints. And I don't think we should actually presume that. But if you can, go back and see, this could save you from having to report this on an annual basis.
I apologize. I forgot that was what we, at the time we had said, if the report shows that there is virtually no use of shackling, of restraint, of mechanical restraint, which is what's referenced in the statute, then it would be okay. We'd know we were still the track was still okay.
Yeah.
So
I just want to say I do appreciate that. And concurrent to this process, the High-End System of Care team, which is a new team, right now has revised a protocol around the submission of those forms to have them channeled through our team so that we can organize those data in a more complete way, because we want to have the understanding of not just use of restraint, but also where was an attempt to secure a sheriff transport that was unavailable, and then who did we rely on, so on and so forth. There's more data elements. So this can certainly be something we put attention to, and I'll see what I can do. My only worry is I know these reports all go into case files, but it might be as kind of messy as trying to do a canvassing of workers kind of across the state of how many of those do you have and how many of those require. It might take me a little time, but I think it is a worthwhile effort.
Thank you. And we appreciate that and would appreciate the follow-up. Representative Cole.
Yeah, continuing on the transportation details piece here, I'm aware that with our adult population who, is restrained and in DOC custody, that, they are not in forward-facing seats in transport and they're not buckled. And I think that's something definitely to think about and to talk about with, it's important for our adult population too, but for our youth population, if restraints are being used, how, what kind of seating arrangements and public safety concern there is there, because we know it's a problem we're seeing in our adult population.
So a little bit of work now might prevent you from having to do this on an annual basis. That's the takeaway.
Thank you
or
for that.
it might prove that you have to do it on an annual basis. It could prove either one. I'm not, the jury's still out on that one.
If we have to, it's a good thing, I imagine. I did make a note of forward-facing seats and buckled because I didn't even know to ask that.
Thank you. And Megan, this isn't something that I expect you to be able to answer right off the top of my head, but or your head, last week I'm moving totally out of Erica's division now, but I'm moving to Economic Services. We had asked them for an update on what was left in the Reach Ahead pilot program in terms of resources, and just want to make sure that that request got to you, because we were expecting to hear back from them today and I hadn't heard back yet. So just wanting to make sure that the Deputy Commissioner Gray had reached out to your office about that.
Yes, Deputy Commissioner Gray is working on that. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Quick last question. Yeah. As long as we're talking about restraints, when we toured Red Clover, we had, I think, asked the question at the time, or expressed the hope that youth would not be being locked in rooms. And the reference to a broken lock made me think about asking that. What is the status of youth being confined, locked in single rooms? Is there a protocol that?
There's protocol that allows for the program to have a youth secluded in a room. It is a element that they're required to submit an incident report on, should that be happening. It does not require incident reporting for overnight locking of the door. And I think that the reality there is there's always staff on duty outside the doors overnight if a youth needs to leave the room, but we don't have all.
So they are locked in. They are locked in overnight.
Overnight, and there's not an expectation that they are incident reporting on that. Other than that, anytime a youth is locked into a space, it is a seclusionary episode that will need to have its own incident report.
Thank you all for being here this afternoon. We appreciate the follow-up, and obviously we'll want to stay on top of developments as they happen, as the program development continues, and appreciate your being with us this afternoon to review the budget as well as the program and expectations. It's obviously it's an ongoing discussion, and we'll, I'm sure, be in touch again as we go through the final budget process, and be looking again at this in the months to come. So Thank you very much. And we look forward to getting that revised cover sheet of the report to make sure that's accurately reflected. And if we could get follow-up data on the transports, that would be great as well. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it.
Will do. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Grady.
Just for new members who weren't there for the tour, when we toured the facility and we specifically asked about youth being locked in the rooms overnight and hoping that that was not going to happen. It strikes me that we, as much as we keep wanting to call this a treatment facility, a treatment facility, it would not be legal to lock somebody in their room overnight. And so it's just a reminder that it's different. I'm not arguing on the spot one way or another whether that should or shouldn't happen. It is a detention facility, but when we pretend it's a treatment facility, but then we lock people in their rooms, it's sort of inconsistent. So.
Okay, thank you, folks. This afternoon, we are switching gears here to H46, an act relating to the Rare Disease Advisory Council. And we're fortunate to be joined by Dr. Page, who's the Dean of the Larner College of Medicine at UVM. Dr. Page, thank you so much for being here this afternoon. We appreciate the fact you're able to fit us into your, what I'm sure is a very busy schedule. I don't know if you've been able to review the most recent version of H46, but as you probably already know, we've been asked to consider establishing a Rare Disease Advisory Council that is present in over half of the states, pretty much all the states on the East Coast except for us. And we've had testimony from family members, care providers, advocates. We had testimony from the Department of Health. And at this point in time, the Department of Health at least is not, or hasn't at least, really, they're not really sure about whether or not they can host this. So that's a question that's still up in the air. And one of the things, and I realize that VDH has reached out to UVM as well to have some discussion about this. One of the things that we noted from the National Organization of Rare Diseases is that in some states, universities host the council. And so we were just frankly reaching out to see what, if any, interest UVM might have in hosting a Rare Disease Advisory Council, and whether it be on a temporary or maybe more permanent basis. And the most recent version of the bill, we have narrowed the scope of the council and looking at it meeting 4 times a year and making some specific recommendations and really providing sort of that the voice of people who are impacted both personally and their caregivers by the wide variety of rare diseases out there. And so thank you for being here this afternoon, and I'm just wondering about your thoughts about such a council.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation. You may be aware I was off in England actually greeting our new grandson, who was born there.
Congratulations.
And so it seems like nighttime to me right now. But when I heard about this opportunity, I wanted to fulfill what I see as my duty to respond to this committee, and really my privilege to have an audience with you. I think I was there last when we were talking about our cancer center and looking for support as we charge forward to designation by the National Cancer Institute or the NCI with our application going in the fall of 26. So we will have another opportunity for me to talk with you all about the support that we're looking for from this committee and the state in general for that in the upcoming session again. It's always a pleasure to get to visit with you. I'm sorry I'm not able to join you in person, but coming back after being away a week it's been a pretty busy week.
Well, the fact that you're awake and you're still here, that's good. I'm glad. And
Yeah,
thank you for
I was
being
super
here.
productive at 4 this morning in my office too. So again, it's an honor to get to visit with you all today. I don't expect you to remember, my specialty is a clinical cardiac electrophysiology. I'm a heart rhythm cardiac specialist. I still see patients on Tilley Drive every Tuesday morning. I am not an expert in rare diseases, but I've done a little bit of work to learn more about just the concept. And this, first of all, I applaud the concept of developing this council and focusing on rare diseases. You know, there are some rare diseases that we hear a fair amount about. Cystic fibrosis, for example, is one, but there are others, neurodegenerative, even some rarer cancers that can't be screened for until they occur later in life, as well as metabolic genetic abnormalities, and even sickle cell anemia is considered a rare disease, which most people use the definition of fewer than 200,000 United States citizens being actively diagnosed with these diseases. It's interesting that rare diseases, when you take the number of them, there are a lot of rare diseases, and actually the organization that is kind of the clearinghouse, NORD, stands for National Organization of Rare Disorders, estimates 1 in 10 in the United States are afflicted by a rare disease. Now, with just over 600,000 citizens in Vermont, that would translate to potentially 60,000 of our Vermonters affected by rare diseases. In my evaluation and discussion with people, there certainly are experts in various areas, although the exactly who would be responsible, we have nobody within our college, even among 1,000 faculty members, who is a general expert in rare disease. Although we have experts in many of the different rare diseases, we certainly are supportive of this effort. I did make note. You noted that in some places the universities house these sorts of councils. I don't know whether you have the letter from the National Organization of Rare Diseases. The second to last paragraph does call out our neighbors, but also applauds what they thought was the residing in the Department of Health, and points out that Maine, Massachusetts, New Hampshire all have these councils within their Department of Health. So I'm kind of surprised that our department is questioning whether it's appropriate. On the other hand, I have such respect for the Department of Health. I know how busy they are, and I apologize. I never got an updated draft. I have the one that was as submitted. I don't know whether there's a date on this, but it starts with monthly meetings, and then so I think this is as introduced. So if there was another draft, I apologize. I never got a chance to see that. But I do think it's important. I would volunteer to be written into the bill. It makes note of, in my draft for the committee, letter F, a representative of an active research institution in the state that receives grant funding for rare disease research, appointed by the Speaker of the House. If one wanted to put our enthusiastic involvement in such a council, naming us, for example, I think the opioid, the hallucinogen bill that came through a year or two ago actually called out the dean or a designate from the Larner College of Medicine. And in that case, Bob Gramling, who's an expert in hallucinogens, is the person I appointed to represent our college for that. So I would be happy to have us written into statute if that's what you all wanted. And we would enthusiastically support, and we'd identify the most appropriate member to be part of the council. On the other hand, I don't know that this necessarily, I know there was some question of this being research related. This is really public health related. And it would seem to be most appropriate. And again, I'm not dodging things. I'm just, I don't know how we would be more appropriate, and actually don't know who the person would be to lead this. But we'd certainly, if the Department of Health saw clear to take this on, and we would certainly be enthusiastic partners to them.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that I'm clear. The Department of Health isn't seeking UVM to host it. That was we as a legislative committee are looking for a host.
I understand.
In case the Department of Health, says that they cannot do it. I mean, we are still hoping that the Department of Health, with this revised work schedule that we have in the amended bill, we are hoping, I should say, that they will take this on. And we're certainly appreciative of the fact that you're willing as an organization to participate in it. And what I'm hearing you say, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Page, is I'm hearing you say that your preference, because this is really a public health issue, is that the Department of Health take the lead on this.
Yeah, well, it's just not evident. Again, I've had 4 days to really kind of process this. So I haven't been able to talk around as much as I might among our entire faculty and leaders thereof. At the same time, it does not necessarily fit with any programs we have or the expertise we have. It kind of bringing everything together. As I said, we do a lot of, I'm really proud of our commitment to the health of Vermont and our state, and I hate to not be as enthusiastic as I might, but I just don't know how this would fit. I would also mention that things are really busy for everybody these days, and resources are tremendously constrained. You know that as well as we do. So I don't know how I could take this on, and likewise it is, as written and as endorsed by the national organization, it kind of fits best with us being close partners and supporters, but fits best within the Department of Health.
Thank you. Any questions for Dr. Page? Dr. Page, we really appreciate you being here this afternoon, especially so recently returned from meeting your new grandchild. So we appreciate that, and we'll be in touch as we progress with this bill. I think we do have an interest in establishing something here in Vermont, and I think it's not only about a public health issue. I think it's also about a large group of people in Vermont being, seen by public health and the medical community, and as well as the folks over at the Department of Disabilities, Aging and Independent Living, who provide supportive services. And so I think it's a combination of all of those things. And I think it's one of the reasons they have continued to advocate for the establishment of it. And as I've said, a couple of different times, I don't mind Vermont standing out on some things, but I don't like the way Vermont looks on this map. So,
And as I mentioned, you do the numbers and it's potentially a significant number of those in the state. And again, I'd love to be able to tell you that this fit for us because I don't want to let you down. I don't want to let the state down. I see our mission as supporting the state and health of our public. So we remain steadfastly supportive of this effort and the citizens of the state, and we care for them. These by definition, rare diseases are going to find their way to the academic health network, and that's one of the reasons I was recruited here and was delighted to come and be a part of this. I mean, the fact that in a state as small as we are, we've got this jewel of an academic health system and a public health, department, and especially under the leadership of Mark Levine, one that really stood out nationally for caring for our citizens. So we look forward to being a part of this. I just don't know how best to do it, and I can't say that I, especially with just a few days to process, could take this on for our college.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, y'all stay well. I appreciate it. It's an honor to get to be here with you and to serve.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Dick.
Bye now.
Appreciate it. I see Natalie has joined us. Hi, Natalie. So I had a conversation yesterday with representatives from the health department, and so they're continuing to have discussions internally as well as probably connecting with Dr. Page at some level. And so we were originally thinking that maybe we would vote this bill out this week, and I've given them a sort of an extra week because this is not a crossover bill.
Right.
I've given them an extra week to figure out, given the revisions that we have made in terms of the workload and the anticipated outcomes, and they're going to have some feedback that they will work with Katie on, and so we'll see what comes of that internal work. So just wanted people to know that hope is alive still. That's the way I'm going to phrase it. Is that accurate, Natalie? Okay, thank you. Okay. So is there anything you want to add, Natalie?
I'll just, looking and having an opportunity to see how we can best serve the community.
Thank you. I think that, there is a real sense among our members that we would like to establish this in Vermont, and figuring out how to do it within the constraints that we have, but also, respecting some of the things that I just talked about and that Dr. Page talked about. That would be great. Yeah.
Just a thought or discussion that's been going on in my mind. I mean, I know we're all, I think, legitimately very concerned about funding issues and pressures on the federal end. I think there will be much more clarity about that, or at least we all hope there'll be at least clarity by next year. And that's something to keep in mind in terms of this bill not being a bill for this year, that if we voted it out and it went to the Senate, it would be there to look at next year. And clearly, if we were in, catastrophic financial situations, it would not be a bill that could even survive at that point.
Right.
But if things were more stable than we might have anticipated, it might be a different picture. So,
yeah.
I agree. I mean, I would like to say that I think looking at something like this, we should look at it as a concept, and not whether or not there's money available, and not use the idea that it might not be fundable because of federal issues as a way to not look at the issue, which I think we've heard a little bit about.
we'd have to do that if it were being voted out
this year.
Eventually,
this year, but
it's not.
But it's not.
Yeah, it's still, if we need to merits of the idea as an idea.
Exactly. And we have narrowed the the financial implications of it by reducing the number of meetings and reducing the number of participants. So
And the scope of the work.
and the scope of the work.
Significant.
Right.
Did I miss the fiscal note?
No, there hasn't been one done because
Okay,
we don't.
no, that's okay. I
No,
just
yeah.
thought I missed it.
Yeah,
Okay.
no. JFO does not do a fiscal note until we actually say we're passing the bill. So, and we haven't said that yet. So.
And I contacted my friend, it's very well versed, she has a child with cystic fibrosis and had her review it. Her husband was a child psychologist. She's done her counseling, she's been involved with this kind of stuff. She said she thinks it's a little top-heavy, but she wants to be involved.
Yeah.
Sounded good. But she said it's a little top-heavy, but when we do, if something comes of it, she would like to be considered too.
And we did remove some of the top heavy
So
specific.
maybe I sent it to her before then.
Probably, yeah. You probably sent her the first version, yeah.
Yeah.
Bet you I did.
Yeah.
I'll send her
Okay,
the second.
okay. So that's the update on that bill, okay? So the next thing we're gonna do is maybe you want to give us an update, Doug, from your visit down with our friends in judiciary and FYI appropriations. We're talking about 36 now. Yes, that's 36. Yeah, I know. We get the 46s and the 36s mixed up. I do in my head. So S36 was voted out of appropriations 11-0. So that will come up on Thursday. But so many committees had an interest in this bill. So committee number 5, Doug went down and
When you put 3 bills
I
together.
know, right?
So the top line, I would say, interest or the point from them hearing from me today about the bill was as a very similar provision is in a bill before their committee, whether they're comfortable with us handling it. And the answer in the end is yes, they are. I think they see that particularly with the discussion of the FIPS, that is more of a human service issue. There was a number of questions and Representative Rachelson will be up here at 3:30 to talk about.
We're trying to get her to come earlier.
Okay.
And I think it's, Katie, how long, I'm sorry to interrupt this for a moment. Katie, how long are you here for?
You have me until 3:30. 3:30.
Okay, so I think what we'll do is we'll have Katie run through the amendment before Rachel, I always want to call her Rachel.
I know.
Barbara, before Barbara gets here. But so just continue on with your report.
There was one, the specific calling out of Chittenden County, perhaps not surprising, raised some questions. People are like, how did that happen? You know, that isn't every county have an issue with a rise in the number of people who may be incapacitated due to, particularly with the drug scourge. So one proposal was, and that a question about that included the chair was raised by Representative Goodnow of Windham County, but the chair was also curious to see Chittenden County specifically called out, and maybe there was even language we could change to refer to prioritize based on readiness and need, which by default they thought would likely be Chittenden County, but the specific calling out of one county just sat uncomfortably with a few members of the committee.
Okay.
I tried to
feedback,
share with them, you know, the volume of individuals in that county was what prompted us, and also therefore the volume of potential individuals who would be lodged at the largest hospital in the state in that ED, and the pressures that puts on, that these things led us to, in part, those were the things that led us to prioritizing Chittenden County. And they asked how it came to be that they may have been in year 2 for the department in their plan. They indicated that our understanding that it was based on readiness, but that for some in the field, that was a surprise to hear that was the rationale. Representative Rachelson did share some concerns from Howard Center, who would be the partner in Chittenden County, with their past efforts to co-locate with crisis beds and PIP beds, and that there were some challenges and reasons why Howard didn't think that necessarily worked well. worked well in their situation. And I said, well, I would imagine that as the Department of Health and Mental Health works through their plan, they're going to work with agencies like the Howard Center to find the best solution. It's not prescribing anything, even though.
Or any provider, frankly.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be the Howard Center, you know, to be honest. I mean, I don't know who else might be there, but,
Right.
you know, in Lamoille County, it's not Lamoille County Mental Health. It's the FQHC.
And, you know, I gave the reasons for some of the challenges for the PIPs, the 24/7 operation, and the move towards co-locating with crisis beds. So on balance, other than what I think we'll hear from Representative Rachelson and the concerns of, you know, I shared, they asked, well, is this, basically the question came up, do we need to be setting policy that this is best practice is to send people to PIPs? I said, that's happening in the field. There's no one that offered any testimony, resistance, or reason to believe that anyone out in the community, law enforcement or otherwise, would not be sending someone to a PIP if it was available. And that seems to satisfy most members. There was a few members who were with some experience from work outside of this building who were like, yes, we need DOC as an option. So they were happy with us taking this on. And other than the Chittenden County question, we'll hear the balance from Representative Rachelson.
All right, thank you. And I will just respond. It is a little bit unusual for us to highlight a particular county. We do highlight regions sometimes, but Chittenden County is big enough to be a region. And I think that part of the thing for me, I have learned, particularly in the last 12 to 24 months, that with the administration, we need to be absolutely clear about what our intent is. And so, you know, the verbiage that, you know, you sort of mentioned about, you know, high volume, high whatever, I'm like, no, that leaves it open to interpretation because they could define a region as something different.
Right.
So I'm okay with meaning what we say and saying what we mean. Katie, could you join us?
Are we gonna go over the other amendments?
Yeah, we can do them both.
Okay.
Yeah.
I should say it seemed to get a very positive response. The time and breadth of witness testimony that we took to make sure that we had 11 witnesses who testified just on this component of the bill. I think that made them even more comfortable.
Yeah.
Any testimonial?
Yeah, I was just saying, considering the Senate didn't take any, so yeah, it wasn't a very high bar to surpass.
Well, I think it also highlighted for them that they don't want to take testimony from 11 witnesses.
Yeah, I know.
If it's one component of a larger bill.
Of a larger bill. So yeah, let's wait on Representative Rachelson's. Let's do Representative McGill's first, and maybe Barbara will be here by the time we get, so she can listen to.
And I don't think it's posted, is that?
It's not posted. It was posted on maybe Friday.
Friday.
I'm just going to double check that.
Okay, I can look to what I right here. Previous. Friday.
No, that's one point.
Okay.
Do you want me to resend it to Lori?
I know she's probably got it someplace. Hold on a second.
Rep. Rachelson said she'll be up
Okay.
sometime before these.
Yes, would you please send that to Lori so she can post it again? We're gonna look first at the amendment that changes the language from inebriated to incapacitated and adds the House Committee on Corrections and Institutions and the Senate to the report coming back from DOC. If you have it there, Katie, you can pull it up. That'd be great. And then it'll be on our website shortly.
Okay.
And this is the one that it says right now, Representative McGill. If everybody wants to sign on to that, that's fine. We're looking to,
That one?
it's right up on the screen.
Oh, I'm looking, I'm still on this one. Incapacitated, I got that one.
That's the one right here. Yeah.
Oh, okay, that was it.
Okay. Hello. Katie McGlynn, Office of Legislative Counsel. So we have the McGill amendment. The first instance of amendment is striking out the Human Services Section 6 to update the language. When I was asked to update the language and I was looking through what was in the underlying statute, public inebriate is not actually used. That's just the term in the building that we have taken to using. So the term that is used in the statute is persons who are incapacitated. So that is what I have used here. So we're changing the section heading to services and programming for persons who are incapacitated. And then in subdivision A1, the department's existing plan to expand services and programming for persons who are incapacitated pursuant to 18 VSA 4810. So that's giving us a direct link to what we're exactly talking about.
Go ahead, Representative.
I looked up the meaning. It doesn't have anything to do with alcohol, drugs, or anything. It's a person that cannot make informed decisions or manage their own affairs due to physical or mental impairment. It doesn't have anything to do with alcohol or drugs or
I
anything,
don't think,
unless there's another somewhere. This is only meant medically. I can't find anything that where it would fit in under this.
Are you looking at the underlying bill?
No, I'm looking at the definition of incapacity.
No, there, but sometimes things are defined specifically in the bill, so,
Oh, so you're gonna put in there due to alcoholism, nothing to do with the definition in the Webster.
she's double checking.
I'm double checking,
Yeah.
but I know there are many definitions of incapacitated depending on what chapter of law you're looking in. And I believe that I checked on this.
Yeah, I'm on the legal term.
What chapter, what title and chapter are you in?
Disabilities, illnesses, effects.
We would use the definitions that are in statute. So
Okay.
Oh,
this
okay,
are
I'm looking
defined in
on the
statute.
Webster, under the, okay, so
So
it
the-
doesn't have anything to do with Webster dictionary, the
No.
real definition. It's what the state has made up.
The definition is what is in the chapter.
Oh, okay, so how do I find that?
I will pull it up on my screen.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just looking under the definition on, like if somebody got,
So incapacitated for the purpose of this particular chapter means a person as a result of his or her use of alcohol or other drugs is in a state of intoxication or of mental confusion resulting from withdrawal such that the person appears to need medical care or supervision by approved substance abuse treatment personnel as defined in the section to ensure the person's safety, or appears to present a direct, active, or passive threat to the safety of others.
so this is a step.
So this is the definition of incapacitated that governs the language we're looking at.
Okay. See, what would be confusing to a common person though is I go right to Google and look stuff up and.
Yeah, that's why, that's why we have Ledge Council.
Yeah.
And that's why we have laws, because they sometimes define things as how they
Right.
appear in the law.
So you referred to it in that's the bit of law there that you referred to in the.
We're amending that statute zone.
Yeah.
That's what this is doing. This is so we, sorry, I answered it.
No, that's okay. Please do. So this, oops.
So we're incapacitated and then it says the reason.
Pursuant to 4810 is not the definition section, but it's a section in the same chapter that creates the language about when people can be held and for how long
Oh, I
and
see.
in what situation. So we're referencing the exact statute that says somebody can be held.
I see.
Okay, keep going.
Okay. So in subdivision 2, I have made the same change. By February 15th, the department shall jointly provide presentation to the policy committees describing efforts to expand services and programming for persons who are incapacitated pursuant to subdivision 1 of this subsection. And I didn't repeat the cross-reference since we're still in the same subsection and we're referring to subdivision 1 anyway. And then in subsection B, this is your report from DOC, and you have it now coming to House Corrections and Institutions. and Senate institutions. And again, we have the same replacement of language, persons who are incapacitated. Reinstate the practice of connecting persons who are in a correctional facility due to incapacitation pursuant to 18 VSA 4810 with appropriate community-based substance use recovery providers. And then, there's a funny space here. The second instance of amendment. So this is the section in the underlying bill, not your bill, but underlying as passed Senate version, that's the repeal. And there's a descriptor of what this language is, and it refers to it as public inebriate language. And so within the descriptor, I have updated it to persons who are incapacitated, so it's consistent. And then I updated the title of the bill because we have many pieces of the bill now. So it's an act relating to the delivery and payment for certain services provided through AHS, services for persons who are incapacitated, and human service board proceedings. So I've just updated it to pull all those pieces together. So next year, when we're looking for it, we'll have a clue.
Yes, son.
Sorry, so I need to understand, because when you were looking up the definitions there, just below incapacitated was the definition intoxicated. And I thought we were trying to be clear here that this only dealt with people who are in fact intoxicated, but it's also the influence of drugs as well.
Yes.
Okay, then I got that wrong.
And I
Thank you
think
very
the
much.
language itself in the section is, well, let me double check, effective until.
In fact, I think that we had testimony from most of the witnesses that said it's actually the majority of people.
Yes,
who are
that's right.
with other substances.
Yes,
Well, that's interesting. Sorry, you can't see what I'm doing. Incapacitated. Oh. Well, that is interesting. So what I've just discovered now that you have raised this interesting question is when I go to the underlying, I'll just pull it up. When I go to the underlying language of 4810, the word intoxicated is used once, but everywhere else incapacitated is used. And incapacitated, I think covers alcohol and drugs, whereas intoxicated. So, can you see this? Yeah. So right here is the only time, this is the version effective until July 125, which under your amendment would stay in effect. Intoxicated is the only time it appears in this statute. But when we look at incapacitated, everywhere else in the statute, incapacitated is used.
But yet doesn't the definition that you had up on the screen a moment ago, doesn't intoxicated also reference drugs?
I thought it did as
Did it?
well.
Yeah, I think it referenced both, so.
Let me see. But they're not, they don't.
Just don't think of it that way.
I guess what I'm thinking is why the difference?
What's the difference? Yeah, what's the distinction?
So here, keep trying to share what I'm looking at so we can.
Yeah, intoxicated means a condition in which the mental, physical functioning of an individual is substantially impaired as a result of the presence of alcohol or other
drugs
in his or her system.
So right now, we're not going to try to figure out why originally the people who wrote this and voted on this decided one, and because when I look at both of those, it includes both.
Same thing.
So we're not going to try to solve that mystery right now. So if we can come back to the amendment, so Katie's just gone through that amendment. We're updating to take out the inebriate and updating that to take to put in incapacitated, and we are adding the relevant committees of jurisdiction to the report back from the Department of Corrections. Just a show of hands on who wants to be on this amendment. So I would like to be on the amendment.
Yeah, it's my amendment.
Anybody else want to be on the amendment?
Yeah.
Okay, and Eric wanted to be on the amendment, so you can make it from everybody.
And wanted to be on.
And Anne might, yeah.
Oh, so everyone, okay.
Yeah.
Does, the, House Clerk already have the amendment?
No, we've been waiting to
Okay.
decide whether it would be a committee amendment or.
Okay, great.
Oh, yeah, this is okay. Yeah. Well, it'll be, yeah, because it's an amendment. It's not.
This amends our amendment.
Yes.
It amends
The
the
amendment to the
report.
amendment.
Yeah, it was
To the report.
something I like to avoid, but we didn't come up with this. It was kind of like, they were happening at the same time.
Sure.
Okay, all right, so now let's take a look at Representative Rachelson's amendment. And then Lori, why don't you just go ahead and let them know that we have an amendment coming to. We have two potential amendments. One from us and one from Representative Rachelson, but we'll see what the committee vote on Representative Rachelson.
An email for the House Clerk. You might want to let her know that it was what I was calling the McGill amendment before, because but it turns out when you're amending an underlying bill from the Senate and the committee has amendments on top of that, the amendment you amend to amend both at the same time is more complicated than you would think it would be. So Betsy Ann was very helpful. Okay.
We're gonna kind of give Doug, like, you know.
I know.
I have no idea how I'm gonna mention that.
It's a short bill, folks, but.
What's this?
Okay, here we go with Representative Rachelson, and thank you for joining us, Representative Rachelson. Katie's just gonna run through the amendment, and then we're happy to have you here to hear what you'd like to say.
Okay. So the first instance of amendment, we're striking out what are sections 4 and 5 in the underlying as passed Senate bill, which is the repeal, the language that says repeal and the descriptor, and then the actual strike through of the language itself. Instead, you're putting in two new section 4 and 5. So we're doing a swap out for the 4 and 5 and the as passed Senate. Here's a new 4 and 5.
I just want to be clear. That's what the amendment is saying.
Yes, not this committee.
Not,
Not-
yeah.
Thank you.
I need to be clear.
We're not saying.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. Yes. So the proposal in front of you is removing the underlying 4 and 5 and the as passed Senate version and replacing that with a new 4 and 5. The first should look familiar because the 4 and the as passed Senate is a strike through of this language. This instead strikes through just the date and changes the date to 2027. So what is this doing? This means instead of getting rid of the language that hasn't taken effect yet, that wouldn't allow for use of a correctional facility, that this language would instead take effect in 2027. So it pushes out the effective date of when that language would take effect.
So because I'm just going to use the language we've used in here. So instead of repealing it, it is extending the time frame under which it would take effect for 2 years. Extending it out to July 1, 2027. That's the amendment that's being proposed. Okay, section 5.
Okay, so this new section 5 amends 4810, which is the language that is currently in effect. So we have two versions of 4810. One hasn't taken effect yet, one has. This amends the version that has taken effect. And this would be in existence under this proposal for the next 2 years until the replacement language takes effect that doesn't allow a correctional facility. So this language does a few things, but the major theme is sort of limiting or putting guardrails around when a correctional facility can be used for this purpose. So in subsection D, it says a person judged by a law enforcement officer to be incapacitated who has not been charged with a crime and who poses a risk to public safety. may be lodged in protective custody in a lockup or a community correctional center for up to 24 hours or until judged by the person in charge of the facility to no longer be incapacitated. So adding that language. And then our lead-in language is if and only if. In subdivision 1, we just have a change for gender neutral language, but the language is that the person refuses to be transported to an appropriate facility or once there refuses to leave the facility. So that's existing language. Subdivision 2 is where the change is. If and only if there's not an approved substance abuse treatment program with detoxification capabilities, a staff physician or other medical professional at a licensed general hospital within a 60-mile radius of where the person was first encountered, who will accept the person for treatment. So this puts sort of a geographic location. So it's not just if there is not the service in the county or in the town, it's within 60 miles that service for a community option is available. And subsection H, if an incapacitated person in protective custody is lodged in a lockup or community correctional center, the person, just switching out with gender neutral language, the person's family or next of kin shall be notified as promptly as possible, unless the person is an adult and requests that there be no notification, in which case the person's request shall be respected. So that substantively is the same. Adding, any personal belongings taken from the person shall be promptly returned to the person upon release, and the person shall be returned to the location the person was first encountered or other reasonable location upon release if requested. And then that was the first instance of amendment. And then we have a second instance of amendment. This is your language with the reporting requirements about the expanded services. So your subsection A, which had the two parts asking to expand the current plan and prioritize Chittenden County, and also in subdivision 2, the report back on how that was going, that would be replaced with this new subsection A. The department's existing plan to expand services and programming for persons who are incapacitated pursuant to 18 VSA 4810 shall first prioritize the county with the highest current use of correctional facilities for this purpose, and then any other underserved region of the state. So first prioritizing highest current use of correctional facility, and then trying to pull in other counties or regions of the state that might be underserved. As part of the department's fiscal year 2027 budget presentation, the department shall include a proposal for expanding community-based services for persons who are incapacitated to underserved regions of the state using, in part, cost savings from diverting persons who are incapacitated from emergency departments and correctional facilities. So the second piece is not just having a report on how it's going, but asking that be built into the budget next year that is presented to you.
But we can get a fiscal note.
There's no fiscal note on
Wouldn't be,
this.
even though there's a cost, no.
It doesn't identify a cost. No, what it's saying is that the departments should include in their 2027 budget next year, when they present a budget to us, what it would cost to expand the community-based services. For FY26, they have told us that they haven't already included that within the department's budget. So they've already accounted for that in the governor's budget.
So there's no cost associated with S36. Thank you.
Is that it?
That's it.
Okay.
That was easy.
Okay, so double checking with you, Anne, on we just did a little straw poll on the previous one, changing an inebriate to
yes,
incapacitated. Just want to make sure you want to be. Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Okay, so let's hear from Representative Rachelson about the impetus for this amendment. And if you want to keep looking at it, you can see it on on our webpage.
Good afternoon. Welcome. Thank you. I think it's my first time in here this biennium.
Maybe. I think you
So,
second.
yeah.
Yeah, you had a bill introduction.
That's right. You know what? It was on Zoom.
Oh, yeah, you were on Zoom.
So, yeah, so,
Yes.
so anyway, I am back, Representative Barbara Rachelson from Burlington. And I have materials if you would like them that I can share after. So why am I doing this amendment? Well, one thing that is interesting is I have heard about some of the issues that have led up to, let me get my notes again. Okay, so one of the first issues I heard about last year was from a law enforcement constituent who said, what's with Act One? Now we have to drive people up to Highgate. Like, what is going on? Do you know how labor intensive that is for us to be driving people to Highgate? And I was like, I have no idea what's with Act One. But this person was like very concerned about the amount of law enforcement time. You won't hear that from every law enforcement officer, I know, because one of my committee member colleagues just said, well, we're driving around anyway, so what does it matter? I just want to say.
You're in testimony.
Okay. So that's one thing. The second thing is we have done a lot of work in our committee related to violence in ERs, and I know that that is an issue and that it's a burden. So I should also say, in my professional life, I ran the outpatient department at the Counseling Service of Addison County for 3 years, which was the preferred provider down there. When I was director of Lund, we were a residential treatment program with an outpatient preferred substance abuse program, but we were not a substance abuse treatment program. So this world is not unbelievably unfamiliar to me. And one of the things that I was concerned about, like some people had said to me, like, well, why did Act One close? And I happened to be in a meeting with some folks from the Howard Center the other day, because people were like, oh, they couldn't get the staffing. Well, staffing did become an issue, but mostly what we've seen in a lot of these programs is funding was an issue. People were level funded for years, then there were some cuts. And so many more people are being transported from their county to a jail. There was a piece, and I don't know if you've seen the pieces in Digger, but there was a piece in Digger about a tourist from Stowe who got sent to St. J. So not the best, I know when Doug presented, it's not ideal. The other thing is I started looking back at the history of the public inebriate program in Vermont, because it is somewhat fascinating. And so I pulled up, and I have copies if people want them, starting with actually it was started out of a law in 1978, the Vermont Alcohol Services Act. In 2001, the Vermont statute was changed to add drugs other than alcohol, which is interesting, I think, with the incapacitating part. But then there was a 2007 Public Inebriate Summer Study Committee. And every report that I looked at, it says the same thing, like, this works where we have a public inebriate program. It doesn't work elsewhere. Let's ask the department to come up with a plan and let's delay it. So the 2010 report, the 2008 report, there's an amazingly great report, 2012 I brought you, when Harry Chen was the commissioner, and they're all saying it's working. It works really well. People are quoting in these reports people are more inclined to seek treatment when they're going to those programs. People were concerned about how much we're spending in corrections for these programs. And so and I want to say the other thing that just got my antenna going is in January, we had witnesses in our committee that came in to talk about the governor's public safety proposal. And the governor, and this is how it first, the fact that this bill was in existence came to my attention. The governor's proposal, and this is from just an article that I read, I was going to refer you to the committee hearing, would repeal a law going into effect come July that prohibits the continued transport of violent, disorderly people impaired by drugs or alcohol to Vermont corrections facilities. Meaningful action on crimes like retail theft require effectively connecting addicted offenders to treatment and long-term recovery. We're working to build a system that can deliver a swift and sustained connection to addiction and treatment and recovery by retooling and reinvigorating existing systems. We were told that would be in Department of Corrections. And I asked, why are we doing that in corrections? I mean, yes, it's great if corrections can do more treatment, but one of the things that has come up nationally and in some of these reports, a larger number of people have been jailed than were just, some of them would not meet the definition of being inebriated or incapacitated. Nationally, I was looking at these they're called sober models in other states. They've saved 50% in ER admissions, 40, there's way higher percentage of people who are getting involved. And one of the things that it keeps saying, back since the 70s, is people who go to corrections have a higher chance of getting swept up in corrections. The other thing is when I hear that people are then released without their wallet and their phone. So, college students in Burlington, they're up in St. Albans. How are they getting back? My colleague said, oh, DOC will let them use the phone. They can just keep calling people till they find someone. Not everybody has friends that have a car and gas money and can take off of work and go get them. And so we're setting people up in rough conditions, which is one reason I put that part in. The other thing is this repeal has been delayed so many times that for us to just totally give up the repeal is really big. And I noticed back a few years ago, Representative Pugh and Representative Brad worked really hard to keep extending it out. And I was trying to figure out a way to put more leverage in there. And if we take it out rather than delay it, I'm worried we haven't gotten the full service plan anyway, which I don't get. I mean, these programs seem to work. They don't seem that hard to stand up. And I get, you and I have talked about in rural areas, it makes sense to have, a few beds that can be really flexible and fluid. The Howard Center has said they definitely need to retool. Things are different now, but the numbers were pretty good until lockdown. And then the numbers decreased. And again, I've watched the number of beds dwindle. And I'm there's no guarantee these programs, if you go through with the full repeal, maybe all the funding will disappear. And that will just be the new way that we do business is we send people up to jail. And yeah. I mean, there's no protection. So I'm very sympathetic. There is a difference between being incapacitated or inebriated and being disorderly. And that is something that, again, I was trying to build in. There is no reason, the statement the governor's office made, of course, if somebody is violent and disorderly, we can they can be charged and held that. We're not taking that. I don't believe we're going to hurt public safety. And again, if we try to get this back, if it's taken away, I don't know how easy that will be. And that just seems, so my question is why not delay it? What do you have to lose by bumping it out rather than fully taking it away.
Have you done? Okay, I started to interrupt, which I.
No worries.
And Madam Chair, don't do that. So I guess first off, thank you for being so passionate about this. And so I think that for me, I'm just going to say for me, I'm not speaking for the committee, although it was I don't remember the exact vote on that straw poll, but it was like 10-1 or 9-2, something like, I think it was 10-1. Yeah, I knew it was one. I was trying to is because we heard loud and clear, okay, from the people who run PIP services now, ones that are in existence, that they really feel strongly that they will always, at least right now, for the foreseeable future, need the capacity to be able to utilize a correctional facility in the case where things are unsafe. And so it didn't make sense to the committee to just extend something out because we're not going to be, it's not necessarily even prudent. I'm just going to say, and I'm a community-based service person, so it's not even necessarily prudent to develop high-cost, low-incidence locked facilities in the community that are not in a correctional facility. If you're going to be locked, you're going to be locked.
Right.
Okay. In a space where you're trying to protect people's safety while they're sobering up. So I don't see us actually devoting to community-based developing what used to be in local sheriff's offices and local police departments that don't exist anymore.
And I'm not asking for, I don't think the amendment that I'm proposing would do away with that. There are people that need to, with the amendment. But that I understand that not everybody is a candidate for going to a community, whatever we're going to call them.
Yeah. We can still use PIP because it's still an I.
Yes, that's true. Okay. So I get that there are still people, but again, we're talking about people who are a danger to public safety or are disorderly, that feels like it's a guardrail. And I'm not necessarily disagreeing with that. I'm just saying about extending this moratorium out for another 2 years. What our committee has said is that unless we invest resources to have a locked facility someplace in the community, and I'm not even sure you can call it a community-based setting if it's locked, because you're still in a locked facility, that there needs to be that level of support for the community, even if we had 100% of PIP beds all active, up and operational. And so by extending the deadline just makes it, I understand what you're trying to do. You're trying to keep the pressure on to do the investment. I get that. And refine who it is that actually has to go, like who is it?
And that's two separate discussions, I think, to be honest. I think refining who goes and indicating that we're going to remove that as an option are two different things, I think, so to be honest with you, without further testimony, I'm not sure that we could just limit it to who pose a risk to public safety, because we did hear testimony about people, it was personal safety as well as public safety. So I'm not sure, me personally, that I would feel comfortable with just inserting public safety, and without further testimony about that. The 60-mile radius thing.
Well, I was trying to think, if people are driving from Charlotte to Highgate, that's probably 60 miles. And we'll drive 60 miles to a jail, but not to a sober bed. Like part of me is like, well, why wouldn't we level that playing field? Why would we let law enforcement drive them to jail, but not quasi-treatment?
I don't get that. I mean, everybody has said that if there is PIP services available, that's where they go first. I mean, yeah, I mean, like in Lamoille County, for instance, I'm not sure, I think it's more than 60 miles to wherever they have to take them.
CJ.
I don't know.
I thought the opposite. I'm pretty sure it was one of the speakers said, and they were kind of perplexed about it, is that they didn't always come to them, is that sometimes law enforcement chose, rather than, because it was inconvenient for them to wait an hour or so for them to arrange
the staff to come.
They would just drive them up to the jail anyways.
Well, that was in the case where they had to, that's where they didn't have the bed.
Wasn't available.
The bed wasn't available, right, 24/7. So other thoughts? I mean, I don't need to be the only one speaking. Other thoughts about, or questions for, you're doing several different things in one amendment. And so just interesting.
No.
Not that we don't appreciate it. And on the last one about the prioritizing the county with the highest current use of correctional facilities,
that's utilizing.
I just read what's right here. That prioritizing the county with the highest current use of correctional facilities for this purpose. And then any underserved region. Well, that's maybe a more artful way of saying Chittenden County. I just, and Representative Bishop heard that from downstairs. I'm just going to be clear that the experience that we have had with the administration in this room about certain things like other programs that we're running, if we're not absolutely specific with them, all of a sudden that becomes Brattleboro. So that's why we specifically said Chittenden County, because that's when we saw the uptick in the number of people going to corrections, it was directly related to Chittenden County's bed closing. So it's very artful. I mean, I think it's artfully worded.
I got that suggestion from, because my first draft had kept Chittenden County in there, and the suggestion to make a switch.
And then about the department's 27 budget presentation for persons, again, that's holding people's feet to the fire about what they should be presenting.
Well, it's like it's been promised and like, I would love to leave. I don't know how many of you want to see this report, if you want them electronically, but each one is like deja vu all over, and like findings, and it's like not much has changed positively.
I don't disagree with that, needing to hold their feet to the fire. I think that one of the things that they're seeing is that they too are seeing an increase in the use of correctional facilities and the staffing that is. And I think that actually has prompted them to be a little bit more active about what they've done. And we've seen a new program that actually is developed, the Northeast Kingdom program. Go ahead, Rep. Cole.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like if we are funding studies to show where our best return on investment is with our tax dollars, and those are the results we're getting, we must take legislative action in response to that to, direct our taxpayer dollars in those areas. And so I really do appreciate the language here where we are specifying who poses the risk to public safety. And I couldn't agree more too, that if it's necessary to be in a locked facility for personal safety as well, that's absolutely relevant. And it would be great to get, expertise, witnesses on that. But it's just, we're not using our law enforcement, time, money effectively if we are, putting more people in jail than, if it's not about public safety and otherwise. And that's not at all to sideline the fact that we must also divert folks who do not need medical attention in our hospitals.
Right.
And so hence I do see the missing piece once again is investment in these statistically and data proven PIP beds. And this is just another, reinforcement of that. So I too hope that if this isn't, if the repeal does happen, I really hope that that message is not lost.
Right.
We need to use the Department of Corrections in the way that they were designed to be used for public safety in very specific situations here. So, and we're only promoting recidivism if we don't.
And the health department report from 2014 says a significant number of people placed in protective custody do not meet the statutory definition of incapacitation.
Yeah, and so just a second, well, that is 11 years old, so we don't know if that's accurate now. And Representative Nielsen and then Representative Donahue. Pardon? No?
No, I was like.
Oh,
jumping
okay.
in.
No, I gotta apologize. I thought the public drinking and drugs would be legal. Why aren't the cops doing their damn job?
I'm not sure. Can you elaborate? I'm not exactly sure what you're saying.
Well, we made it illegal.
I don't know, when I was doing security in Burlington, public drinking is illegal.
It is legal.
Illegal, it's legal to drink?
Well, drinking is not, but being intoxicated is legal.
But if they have the container and beverage, then it is illegal.
Right.
Just like driving, if you have the container in your hand, it's illegal.
To walk out of the bar.
So it's legal to walk down Church Street with a beer in your hand?
No,
No.
that's illegal.
Well, I think people say they're all the time drinking trash and they're not enforcing. it.
That's a law enforcement problem.
Right, that is
We would stop a lot if we stopped it then.
Right.
That's my opinion, and I'll be quiet.
You don't have to be quiet.
No, but I'm just gonna know who to come up with, okay?
I just want to be clear. It's not illegal to be intoxicated in public. There are laws around open containers in public and driving and things like that. But if I were intoxicated and I were walking down the street and I started being, annoying to people who are trying to shop, on the street, somebody might make a complaint about me. It's not, at that point, it's not breaking the law. If I started slapping and hitting people and, then I become more than a nuisance, I am breaking the law. So there's those distinctions. So yeah, their law enforcement does their job to the best of their ability. And that's not really what we're talking about in this bill though. So,
can I make one more?
Yeah.
So one thing that I have found in my work, especially with pregnant and parenting women, is trying to get people to get help and having them feel like it's against the, like, it is not a good way to encourage people to get help if they think they're going to end up in jail. And I realize they're not being booked, but I wouldn't want to spend a night in jail, and I bet most of us would prefer not to. We as a society went to great lengths, and Vermont was in the forefront of treating this as a health issue. Physicians have come out saying it's a health issue, law enforcement, there are lots of groups that have. And the mixed messages is confusing to people. And so I'm just asking you to think about that with your work.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's my understanding they only go to the correctional center if they're dangerous. We had a nurse here say they're very scared. So we have to protect the people that's treating them. So it's my understanding that they only go to the correctional center if they're proving a threat to other people.
So,
Anne?
yeah, so I think the data that we
just blinking.
Well, no, the data that we saw, there's a group who are, because of level of danger or violence. There are a group currently who go to corrections because there is no PIP bed, which they would be eligible for. So those are kind of I think the biggest worry right in the moment, that because we don't have another capacity, they're ending up there. Or they don't have a family member, because that's ideally where they're going first. Somebody's coming to take them home and keep them safe. But I think when I process through it, I mean, we recognize that unless we construct new, secure, non-correctional facilities, there will always be some, hopefully a very small number, but there will be some people who can't go to a PIP bed, whatever they're called, or wherever they are, because of that. And so the idea that we will never need any kind of a secure facility at all is not valid. And cost effectiveness wise, we are not going to build some secure facilities specific for this purpose, which are very randomly, erratically used. So that there is going to always be, hopefully as small as possible, a group who ends up needing to be addressed in corrections, which was part of and we need to make sure the right things happen there while they're in that protective custody. That was a part of what we tried to start injecting in the bill. And then the bigger, more immediate part, I think, is we need to eliminate people who are ending up there only because of lack of beds. And that's where we were really pushing and seeing for the first time very concrete plans that are being put into place to address some of that. And so to me, what it sort of ended up coming down to is, do we keep that, that hammer there, like if you don't keep working on it, when the other piece to that is, if the law were to go into effect, if it were not postponed further, we know that the result of that would be a huge impact on hospital emergency rooms. And some of those people clearly ending up being charged with crimes, because sitting in an inappropriate place in an emergency room where they don't have the medical need, something's going to happen where they end up being charged. So then we have a double bad effect. And I think we heard some pretty compelling testimony of how much the emergency departments that are overwhelmed and have people in a psychiatric crisis waiting for 2 weeks for a bed in their emergency room and all these other things, they have a very, very real fear about this repeated deadline coming up that they see coming up upon them in terms of impact. So keeping a hammer on state systems, which is really about keeping a hammer on ourselves to fund it, to put it on a priority level with funding, which we often, very well how much demand and pressure there are in so many areas. But keeping a hammer on them means keeping a hammer on the emergency departments as well. And I don't think that's fair to do to them. And I think it's incumbent on us to make sure that this happens. Not incumbent on, not putting it on the emergency rooms to have to keep showing up and saying, please, please, please don't do this to us. In another 2 years, we'll be pleading again.
So lots of research has shown that these programs save money. There's a new report that's out, March 25, Butte County.
How many things do we know would save money if we would invest in a lot of things? And we need to keep fighting that fight, but there's only so much money in the interim.
So I'm concerned about all the people that are going to go off to jail. Go ahead, Esme.
Yeah, I kind of see the repeal that we have been talking about as happening regardless of which path we're taking. Bottom line, corrections is not being removed as an option. It's just a matter of who is allowed to be incarcerated or not incarcerated, held, So I do, again, I appreciate that the option is still there, because we don't want someone who is acting inappropriately and or illegally in our hospitals. There is punishment and a crime. but why are we punishing for not a crime, you know,
Yes,
right now?
exactly.
So, and I do think it's a massive waste of taxpayer dollars in the short term and long term, because we know that. Oh, yeah, anyway, so yes, again, I think I would staunchly advocate for, I do like this language. I do think that the clarification does help in achieving both our goals and not removing corrections as an option. But to say we need to work on this, and we can't, you know, just let that be the norm again.
If I can, I would just say, I would echo Anne's fear and concerns that with the inclusion of this language, which, you know, on the surface, I like that only folks who pose a public risk of public safety would go to corrections. But once we then put this into practice, if someone doesn't rise to that level, they'll be lodged at the ED. And that's where we've heard bad things can happen. It's not appropriate place to lodge people.
And they can end up with charges
They
because.
end up with charges.
They wouldn't.
And I would echo this, a second point that Anne made is, rather than, I think, putting the pressure on by holding off on the repeal, it is incumbent upon us to put the pressure on. We saw and presented to us was a 2-year plan, and it is incumbent upon us as part of our oversight and accountability that we take seriously in this committee to continue, and as we have put language in the bill, to have them back come no later than February 15th, reporting on progress and the like. And I have not read all of the reports that you have read, Representative Richardson. But I'm hoping what we're seeing through this concrete plan, that it differs some from just study and statistics. And that's, again, our job to ensure that it goes past that and they follow through. And where they're hitting obstacles to fulfilling their plan, that's where it would be incumbent upon us to advocate where we see appropriate and where funds are available to help ensure that the best practice of having a PIP is available.
And I did want to say, and resources actually already going to the development
Yes.
and implementation already. That is happening. Yeah,
Thank
go
you.
ahead.
I just want to acknowledge that when we received this bill, our eyebrows were raised at this, which is why we took extensive testimony on it. So it's not something that we just kind of let sneak by. We were very concerned about this issue and the fact that a lot of testimony was not taken in the Senate, or any testimony was taken in the Senate. I was trying to be political.
I understand. I mean, that's what it is. They didn't take any. That's what they
But
was
given
reported to
the
us.
amount of testimony we heard that supported our position that we ended up with, I just feel like, to kind of honor the people who are doing the work in the field on every side of this, I feel pretty good with where we landed.
Again, it would be good to just see who would or would not be able to be sent to jail. There are so many different laws that people can be sent to jail for, aggravated assault, battery. It's
not being arrested, though. I mean, I just need to be clear, they're not being arrested.
They're not being charged.
No, they're not. But again, what if they get angry at the jail?
Yeah.
They will be charged, and that's one reason the sober houses are a good option.
We don't disagree with you.
Yeah.
Okay, so we don't, let me guess.
Sorry.
We don't disagree, Rachel. I mean, I always do that, Barbara, when I'm under stress. Barbara, we don't disagree that the investment in PIP and local, sober assistance that's what we want to see. And that's what we will continue to be very strong in our oversight about. So I guess it's, in this case, it's not an either or. We heard loud and clear that we do need to have this as an option. And we don't want it to be an option for people who don't present that danger. I agree with you about that.
So how will that happen?
Because we are receiving data back and we are receiving reports back. I understand you want to see that in statute. I get that. As the amendment stands right now, all of it, I can't support it, because I do feel like with the testimony that we've taken, that we came to a place that might not be the absolute ideal, but it's practical and it's realistic. And it is, also holds both of those departments, three of the departments accountable, for not only developing a plan, but implementing a plan. And they are devoting resources towards it.
So I'm wondering how we'll protect people from getting sent to jail that don't need jail, that are not the people that we're all worried about, that are threatening in the ER.
Right now,
after this bill passes, if it passes.
well, honestly, after this bill passes, this would be actually, there's more focus on it. Okay, so we're not changing the status quo of what's happening right now, frankly, with this, the bill as we've passed it out of the committee already doesn't change what's happening right now. It doesn't change what's happening right now. What the piece of it that does change it for the future is the focus on developing the resource in the place where there is the most use of correctional facilities, which is in Chittenden County. Or in however that is so artfully worded in your amendment. And so this is not making worse a problem that already exists today. This is for me, I think it puts added focus on the alternatives to the use of corrections. And we might agree to disagree on whether it does that or not. Or in the way that does.
Or look at the numbers of how many people are being jailed.
Well, yeah, so.
We did.
And I think that the administration they actually said, oh, this is startling. We've never seen this before. They were collecting data, which I got the sense it's moving them toward thinking about a plan, a set of options that will move us in a different direction than we're currently going.
Okay, so last comment and then last two comments, and then we are going to move to a vote on this amendment.
Kind of like a funny thing, because when I was a little girl, it was alcoholism. And you automatically went to jail to get dried out. And that's what it was called. So when I was a teenager, they say, let's say an uncle so-and-so went and got dried out in jail. We didn't have correctional centers. So this has been done for generations and generations. And I never heard any negative about it. It's just they went, got dried out and it came home. But just to say, unless they do something wrong and end up getting in trouble, I can't say about that. But this isn't a new concept. It's just we didn't have correctional centers. They called it jail. But that's it.
Esme.
Thank you. One minor point here is talking about the personal belongings piece. And I feel like it did come up a lot in our conversation, but we didn't totally address it. And so I also appreciate that this does something with that. And so I wonder if that could be somehow incorporated, just like about how it should follow the person, wherever they are. It might not be in their possession.Maybe it's at the DOC, but when they're transported, so are their items, and then they're dropped off.
I apologize for having been late from emergency, but is there also a problem with being returned to where they were brought from?
Yeah.
I think those are.
I think the
important
things
things to
should
address.
go with them. That makes sense.
Okay.
But
the returning to where you were brought from, why that seems logical. I don't know who is going to do that.
Right.
I'm pretty sure corrections can't spare the staff. Take somebody back and then somebody go get them. I think if you've gotten intoxicated, it's up to you after you sober up to figure out with your belongings.
Their belongings.
To figure out how you get back to where you go.
Well, do they get bus fare if they have no means?
Well,
I don't know.
They have Venmo and credit cards and, well, not all of them, but I think that, Esme, you're right, that the issue about their belongings, staying with the law enforcement that brought them, that doesn't make any sense. They should transport the belongings with the person.
Leave them with the person.
And so,
There must be
there's
a
a way to
reason
do
they
that.
can't do that. Why? There must be a reason they can't do that.
Yeah.
Or why wouldn't they do that?
no, there's no reason. Why is there a reason? There's nobody being arrested. There's no law enforcement reason.
But
Okay, I
it's
just-
weird that they would drop the person and not their stuff. That is weird.
Yeah, Dan.
Depends on how much belongings they have.
Yeah, that's true, I suppose.
Oh,
Cart
that's
full.
right. If it's.
And are they gonna do?
But we meant like at least a phone.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to refocus us. I'm gonna refocus us, folks, okay? So we're not gonna pick apart piece by piece of this amendment. So we're gonna vote on the amendment as a whole, and I am going to say that this is, I'm just reminding people that this is going back to the Senate with our amendment. It is a bill that is a this year bill. So it met crossover. Will definitely be open to having more discussion when we have reports coming back next year that we go through all of our reports in this committee. We just did that on Friday. And we will assure that we have the data necessary to make future decisions about this. So we're not going to sort of like pick apart pieces of the amendment. We're going to vote on the amendment as a whole. Are people have any other further questions for the presenter of the amendment or for Ledge Council before we take a straw poll? Okay, it's always weird when they vote on the floor, but all right. So all those who are in favor of the amendment as presented, please raise your hands. Okay, 2. All those opposed to the amendment, please raise. Todd, just that'd be fine. Thank you. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 2, 8, 1. 2 in favor, 8 opposed, 1 absent.
Oh.
Eric, yeah.
Thank you for having me. Do you want me to give these to Lori, or do you not want?
Why don't you give them to Doug? Doug is reporting this bill and that might be helpful for him. Right. Thank you, Rach. Oh, I did that again. Barbara, I do that all the time. Thank you, Barbara.
I know your name now. I didn't know her name before, but I do know it.
Yeah, well, don't go by what I say.
But I'll say Representative Richardson.
Okay, so tomorrow.
Yeah, thank you.
Tomorrow, so this bill will be on notice. It'll be reported out by Doug. I think we've made all the rounds and handled everything so far, at least. So that'll be on Thursday. Tomorrow, we're going to take a look at the act relating to the study and design of a long-term care trust fund. And thank you. And the allergy season coming out. Okay, so we're gonna be doing that. We'll have, did the treasurer confirm? Okay. We're gonna have a walkthrough by Katie, and Representative Yakuboni will be here, and he'll be here. I know. If you're interested, there was a news report on WCAX about that bill, even though they said it.
Was it good?
They said, they said it was going to be considered later this week in an important healthcare
Yeah, that's
committee.
what they said.
We got the healthcare part.
Where are the important?
It was like, yeah, I know, right? Okay. And then we are going to be hearing from our final 2 witnesses on H248, which is the supplemental childcare grants and childcare financial assistance program. And then after floor, we should be voting on H248 after floor, okay?
Okay.
And any other changes that we might have about that. Okay, anybody else have any questions?